at historic Rickwood Field, home of the Birmingham Black Barons, the oldest stadium in America. Got a bunch of good stuff from the gift shop. My little friend Miss Nolan helped me. There's a tournament going on here. There's a team from Hoover, Alabama, a black team. Went to the gift shop, got this Willie Mays cap, and a lot of other stuff too that I want to show you now. Maybe you'll see some of it in class. Sunday afternoon, Birmingham, Alabama, Rickwood Field. Does it get better than this? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Good everything, Dr. Carr.
Good everything. How are you?
Good out in them streets, but the stands were empty.
Well, it was a youth baseball tournament on a Sunday afternoon. So the only people there were the parents of the players and the teams that were coming in shifts. I came to understand from my friends in the gift shop / history center of the place, and from my new friends, a sister who was taking tickets. She organized the tournament. I just was in Birmingham. I said, I'm not coming back to Birmingham and not go to Rickwood Field. I'd never been. So when I walked in, there was a sister sitting there with a folding table and two little girls, one on each side. And I asked her what was going on. She told me, it was a youth tournament. I organize these tournaments. And I said, oh, wow. Oh, well, I just came to look in the stadium. So I said, how much is it? She said, $10. What about my money? Because, people of a certain age, we keep some cash on us, right. No question. So I gave her $10. And then the younger of the two young ladies, who I came to understand her daughters, she said, you want me to show you around? I said, oh, that'd be great. And I said, is it all right with you? She said, yeah, she can take you. I said, okay. I said, but I'm not going anywhere until I know your name. My name is Greg. What's your name? She said, my name is Nolan. Come on, with her little Afro puffs. The child took me all around the stadium. So I thank Nolan, a rising, well, she's in kindergarten, so she'll be in the first grade next year. So this coming fall.
A 5-year-old took you around.
5-year-old. Absolutely. Little black girl. And I was having a ball. So we walked around. I said, well, take me to the gift shop first. I want to see what they have. She said, okay. So she took me in there, and I stayed in there for about an hour, because come to find out, the guys who were running the place are also historians. So I was talking about Willie Mays, the Negro Leagues, the Black Barons, the Birmingham Barons, the white team, how when they tore down Comiskey Park in Chicago, Rickwood Field became the oldest stadium in the country. It was built in 1910. And about every maybe 10 minutes, Nolan would come in there checking on me. And then so finally, after I had, gotten what I was going to get, exchange addresses, and said I was going to keep in touch. I said, okay, I'm ready. She said, come on, I'm going to take you upstairs. Upstairs to her meant up the steps into the stadium. So she walked me around the place, and oh my gosh. And I said, well, I'm going to sit here for a minute and watch. That's when I took the video. So she said, okay. She said, well, if you're looking for me, I'm going to be on my lunch break in the front. So I don't want y'all anybody talking about black children are lazy. I'm gonna introduce you to little 5-year-old Nolan in Birmingham, Alabama, who works with her mother at Rickwood Field organizing baseball tournaments. So anyway, that was a beautiful moment to spend that afternoon.
I'm smiling because both of our childhoods were filled with going to stadiums, arenas, and things, and they were usually full because everybody, not just the parents or the people participating, would show up for the children. And, we're so committed to our devices and our time doing things that are unimportant, that what you're describing right now, I'm wondering if little Nolan, and was it her grandmother or her mother?
No, it was her mother.
Okay.
That was the beautiful thing about it. Yeah, it's a young lady. I'm sure her mom younger than I am. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, more of that. I mean, this is the way forward, that centering community, having the multi generations and the children involved, and you being involved with, it's yeah, that's nice, Dr. Carr. Thank you.
It really was beautiful. Thank you, because and we've talked about it, and we'll be going out some places, so y'all stay tuned.
Yes.
Practice cooking, so we got some places to go. And, anywhere I go, I try to stop and see, well, what are we doing? And so it really was. And while, in fact, while I was in the gift shop, and let me see, I have to remember, because most of the people in there were white, which doesn't matter. But it was interesting. Yes, it's Joseph DeLeonard.
So this field is what? This, historically speaking, as it relates to us.
It's a well it was started in 1910 it's a baseball stadium, but the Negro Leagues played there. In fact, this is one of a trilogy of books by a local historian named Art Black. This is the last three of them. I got all three while I was in the bookstore. It's called At Bat: Journeys to Fame and Glory Through Wickwood Field. And if you remember, when we were talking back in the summer of 2024, we talked about remember, because our brother, of course, Roy Wood from Birmingham, covered the East-West All-Star Game, which was the tribute to the Negro Leagues, and it was doubling as a tribute to Willie Howard Mays. But of course, Willie Mays made transition just before they played that game in the summer of 2024. And if you remember, we talked about this, of course, everybody talked about it, how Reggie Jackson had talked about the segregation and the racism he faced when he was in the South playing at that very field. And here's Reggie on the cover of this book with other members of the championship Oakland A's team, because the Birmingham A's was the farm team of the Oakland A's. And so there's Reggie right there on the cover, along with Joe Rudy. And of course, you remember Charlie Finley.
Yeah.
the owner of A's.
I'm glad they got that bat position. Can you hear me? Okay, let me.
Yes, I can. Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad they got that bat right across that man's face.
Right across his face.
Yes.
But I'm embarrassed to say, if I knew it, it was somewhere in my deep memory, and I didn't pull it up as recall, because the historian, as I said, the field historian was there. He and I talked the longest, most of that hour, Joe DeLeonard, and we talked a long time. I did not either remember or know that Charlie Finley's from Birmingham. That's how the A's, and that also explains a whole lot, don't it? So, I mean, Blue Moon Odom, Bert Campaneris, Vida Blue, they all played on that field. It was the field for the Birmingham A's farm team. So it was a white field. And so if you think about from 1910 to the 1930s, everybody from Dizzy and Paul Dean played on that field. In fact, I want to say, what did Joe say? He said there have been 180. I don't want to mess it up. I think he said 183 major leaguers, people who made to the major league, who have been to the field to play, but 3 of them were hurt and didn't play. One of them, I'm trying to remember the 3 he said, but I won't remember it off the top of my head. But at any rate, Al Kaline was one for the Detroit Tigers. They came in to play an exhibition game, and Al Kaline was one. Anyway, so in talking to him, then I realized, then he talked about how the Negro League started using the field. So, remember when last time I was in Birmingham, I went by the Negro Southern League Museum, which is just a beautiful museum. If you ever get a chance to go, when you go to Birmingham, go to the Negro Southern League Museum. It's less than a mile away from Kelly Ingram Park, 16th Street Baptist Church, A.G. Gaston's Motel, all the places we talked about when I was there last year. And of course, it is a sister museum to the National Negro League Museum in Kansas City at 18th and Vine in Kansas City. And so, as we were talking about the Negro Leagues, and that's when the Birmingham Black Barons played there. So, of course, Willie Mays, who was a teenager when he played for the Black Barons in Birmingham, but also everybody else who came through there, Satchel Paige, Buck O'Neill, you name it, had come through Wickwood Field. And so for many years after the Negro Leagues folded, it was in fact, the last Negro League championship, 1948, Mays was on that team as a teenager, was the Birmingham Black Barons were the champions. The last national champions in Negro League Baseball. And before it just, began to collapse in the wake of the Robinson integration of the Brooklyn Dodgers, thanks to the man who gets entirely too much credit, Branch Rickey. And so, we were talking about that, and he was showing me they have a lot of murals and photographs. In fact, the Negro Leagues is really the draw. And then that brings me to the last movement in terms of who plays there. A lot of local teams. That is the home field for Miles College, the HBCU in Birmingham. So it's like, okay. So it's good and black.
So why did you want us to start there with all that is happening in the world?
Space. Well, because of space, because of land, because wherever we are is important to us as those school children that Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump slaughtered a week ago today in Iran. It's as important as the bed that both of them lay in last night, or Pete Hegseth or Christy Nome. Everywhere that we are is the most important thing to us at any given moment in time. And when you stitch those things together, they become a world. And our world is being threatened now by madmen, maniacs, sick men and women. And we have to do something about it. And when people think that you can't do anything about it, we have to sit still for a moment and think about how we start doing something about it. And the first thing we have to free is our minds. And when we free our minds, we can then begin to change our action. After all, what is the motto of Urban View, as you have, revamped, line up, and had this space preserved so that we can have these conversations where talk empowers and becomes action. In order to speak effectively, you have to be able to have some thoughts. And that's the first speech in the mind. So sitting there Sunday afternoon, which was less than 24 hours after I had left DC coming to Atlanta for the 35th Malcolm X commemoration celebration, I was sitting there thinking about how the world is connected, and at the same time, the world is no bigger than wherever you are at any moment. And I'll tie all that together. Let me show everybody this. This is the schedule for those of you find yourself in Birmingham. Go see the Golden Bears, the HBCU in Birmingham, Miles College. That's their schedule. The next game, they're playing Alabama A&M on the 10th. That's in a few days. And also, I would love to get down there for this. From the 20th to the 24th, the Southwestern Athletic Conference has their tournament there, the SWAC. CC Grambling and Southern and all them, they're going to be at Rickwood Field from the 20th to the 24th. And then you see some other games there, the 27th, Pensacola Blue Wahoos and the Birmingham Barons. The Birmingham Barons are a farm team, but they play in a new stadium nearer downtown Birmingham. And then there's the East-West Classic. And that'll be the last thing I'll say. Last thing I'll say about this at this moment is the East-West Classic, because we remember the East-West Classic started to celebrate Willie Mays, and that's where we saw Roy Wood hosting. And now, if y'all remember, we talked about this when the Classic came about. Watching the Classics, beautiful thing, seeing all these brothers and sisters, seeing all these brothers, especially on the field, Major League Baseball players, retired players, current players playing in this Classic connected with Major League Baseball. So I called Cooperstown because obviously I wasn't able to get there, so I couldn't get a program from the day. So I called Cooperstown because they were opening an exhibit called Soul of the Game. And I said, is there any commemorative material, book, pamphlet, brochure, catalog from the East-West game? And they said, oh, I don't think so. Let me check. I said, okay. So I stayed on the line, and whoever it was checked around, came back, said, no, there's nothing. I never trust anything by phone. I would rather go see it myself. And so I said, okay, all right. A few months later, this came out. Duh, of course, you got a new exhibit. There's got to be an exhibition catalog. I don't blame the person who was talking or the people who couldn't answer, because I'm not surprised by that. It's like going in a bookstore now and asking the people who work there about books. It don't work like that no more. I mean, there are places where it does, but mostly it doesn't. So although museums, I would like to hope it would be a little different, but most museum bookstores I go in, they don't know much about the place. They know about some things. They know more about the stuff they sell that's apparel than the books, unfortunately. But I always keep an eye out. I'm constantly monitoring. And so when this came out, Play Harder, The Triumph of Black Baseball in America, this is the official publication, and they're the Kansas City Monarchs standing there, the official exhibition catalog for the new permanent exhibit at the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Play Harder, The Triumph of Black Baseball in America. And it's a wonderful, of course, like most things, catalogs like this, the best thing is the pictures. But it's the Negro Leagues, it's Black folk who come into white Major League Baseball. It's beautiful. I mean, you know, you got the here, 1971. We were talking about it this weekend. This is the starting lineup of the Pittsburgh Pirates. The first time in the history of white Major League Baseball that a white Major League Baseball team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, 1971, fielded an all-African lineup. Now, the thing about it is this page right here is more accurate than these, good speech, than these misleading, disinformation spreading writers who, here we are the first week in March, who will begin to spread the propaganda of the decline of Black players in Major League Baseball. This tells you the importance. We're going to come all the way back around to this before we finish today. The importance of narrative, stories. Stories shape everything. We talked about that a week ago with Haile and Shriek Garima and the debut of Black Lions, Roman Wolves, and how Haile said, you know, in many ways, stories are scalpels that can be used to slice into your brain and cut off your memory. Stories are also potential sutures. They can stitch your memory together. In the instance of this page I just showed y'all in this catalog, this is a suture. Unintentional, because they wanted to pride this, and it's interesting. White Major League Baseball wanted to pride itself for saying that they fielded the first all-Black team. Also, they called it non-white here. Isn't that cute? Still trying to hedge your bets. Now, the question that you would ask, if those of you who are in elementary school teachers or middle school teachers or high school teachers or college teachers or graduate program teachers or teachers in period, you could ask this question. You could pull this up, take all the names out, and ask the people who you're asking, spot the Latino. They would all fail unless they know baseball. Because on this page, you got Roberto Clemente, Puerto Rico, right? You got his man's Jackie Hernandez, huh? Yeah, of course. And the catcher, the famous catcher, Manny Sanguinean. 3 of these cats came from Spanish-speaking countries. But in 2026, they're going to, like clockwork, they're going to start running these stories in the next few weeks as Major League Baseball players report to training camp on the decline of Black players. What do you think a Colombian or a Venezuelan? The World Baseball Classic just got underway as well. So, you know, I love the World Baseball Classic much more than the World Series. On a scale of 1 to 10, if the World Baseball Classic is a 10, the World Series is a -10. I could give a damn about the World Series. The World Baseball Classic is a beautiful thing. If you ever want to see something, we've talked about that before. So anyway, so the catalog came out and I was like, cool. But until a week ago tomorrow, until last Sunday, I hadn't gotten my hands on this until I walked into the gift shop that Nolan took me to. And I'm going through everything. I don't go in those places without scouring everything. So I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the mugs. I'm looking at, of course, the hoodies. So, you know, I got me a nice hoodie. This is Rickwood Field, America's oldest baseball park. You know, I'm representing. I'm looking at all the little things, the pamphlets, the books. That's when I bought the trilogy, Art Rust's trilogy. Got all that. Yeah, okay, very good. And then I see stacks of magazines that they're trying to get rid of. Here's a lesson. I bought this for $1. This Muhammad Ali, Sportsman of the Year, 19. They said, oh, we just trying to get rid of those. Okay, fine. I'll take that off your hands. And then I spotted the thing I had been asking about that they didn't tell me about, and I'm embarrassed because I should have been a little bit more thorough. The National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum has an official magazine. It is published 4 times a year: spring, summer, winter, fall. Spring, summer, fall, winter. At which point, after I got my hands on this Sunday, when I saw it in a stack of magazines, there was only one. I reached out to the Baseball Hall of Fame and they said, oh yeah, we do have that. Okay. So I told him to send me 2 more because it was only $4 a piece to this day. So go to the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum and buy them all out because I had to get 2 more. This is the issue from the East West Classic. One of the this photograph right here just makes me smile. Here is CC Sabathia and Ken Griffey Jr. at the East West All-Star Game in tribute to the Negro Leagues in the summer of 2024. CC Sabathia has on the Newark Eagles jersey, and the kid, Ken Griffey Jr., the Kansas City Monarchs. That's the cover of the magazine Memories and Dreams. This is the summer 24 edition, and you can get it. I said, this is what I've been looking for since the damn game was played. I knew y'all must have had something. And of course, that's the cover story for the this is the article on the exhibit in Cooperstown, Living History. And then what do you see? Here is Billy Aaron, widow of Henry Aaron, the Hammer, tossing out the first pitch with Ken Griffey Jr. standing behind her on the mound. I'm saying that's what I was looking for. Y'all can't answer no questions. So if you work in a place that sells books, try to know some of the books, okay? And if you work in a museum, try to know, because every once in a while, somebody gonna call up there who kind of knows what they want and looking for and expects that you can help them. Anyway, I'm saying it's a beautiful thing. So I wanted to start there because we are in a moment of crisis, but when have we not been in a moment of crisis is the question. And before I do or say anything else, let me just pause a moment, take this bell for everyone who has lost someone who's become an ancestor. Watched Jesse Lewis Jackson's public funeral yesterday, and there's the private one coming up. So we ring the bell. And I think about this because we learned the day before yesterday, we learned on the 5th of March, Jesse Jackson, of course, laying in state in Columbia, South Carolina, and then they had the ritual there, thanks to Kathy Adams and several other Nubians who actually went to the ritual. It was important. Thank you for everybody who got a chance to go to Julius, to Regine, who also in Nubia Nation attended the ritual, the services in Columbia, South Carolina, and of course, Kat, who really led us through as well what happened at Brooklyn Baptist Church and what happened there in the Capitol Dome, Rotunda Dome in Columbia, South Carolina. And so, but we got news on the 5th that on Thursday, as folks were gathering in Chicago to pay respects as they were going to as Jackson was laying in state, on the transition of the great Bernard Lafayette. Bernard Lafayette, raised in Tampa, Florida. Bernard Lafayette, one of the Freedom Riders. Bernard Lafayette, one of the stalwarts, the official director of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee's Alabama Voter Registration Project, who went to American Baptist Seminary in Nashville, Tennessee, where he was classmates with people like Jim Bevel. He was a student of the great James Lawson, whose memoir just came out, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. He did training at Highlander Folk School, who then after cycling through SNCC, went to work with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, one of the major figures in our long liberation struggle, who worked the rest of his life. He, the night that Medgar Evers lost his life, became a premature ancestor in Jackson, Mississippi. In his driveway, Bernard Lafayette was getting severely beaten in Selma. And Bernard Lafayette lived his whole life as a freedom warrior, liberation warrior. Just want to raise his name. I knew his first wife, Colia Lafayette, then later Colia Clark. Colia Clark was one of the elders who advised us, who traveled with us, who helped interact with, mold and shape, and be molded and shaped by our teenagers, our young people in Philadelphia freedom schools. And she would share those stories of SNCC and the danger that these women and men put themselves in. And if you read Bernard Lafayette's memoir, In Peace and Freedom, he'll tell you about being a freedom rider and how he got involved after, in May 1961, the Freedom Riders were beaten. Bernard Lafayette took the leg from Birmingham to Jackson, Mississippi. But if you remember, the leg that left the North and went into Birmingham made a stop in Anniston, Alabama. And we were leaving Atlanta, going to Birmingham. And on the way to Birmingham, we stopped at Anniston because we had never been to Anniston, Alabama. And Anniston is where, if you remember those, everybody probably is familiar with this, even if you don't know much about it. Remember the images of the Greyhound bus being set on fire just outside of Anniston, Alabama. And so we went to the National Park Service location, which is next to the alley, which is next to the building where the Greyhound bus parked before the white nationalists, some of whom are probably still alive today, certainly their children and grandchildren are, maybe even living in Anniston, Alabama, where, footnote, by the way, I think everybody probably is familiar with this story by now, Cat Williams has bought an old decommissioned military base there and is going to do in Anniston, Alabama, what Tyler Perry did in Atlanta, except Cat Williams has now entered a memorandum of understanding with Miles College, that same HBCU whose baseball team has as a home field, Rickwood Field, has partnered with Miles College to have those HBCU students come over into his developing film studio because they're going to use all the cutting edge AI stuff and start talking about filmmaking with all this advanced technology. And they're going to train there. Shout out to Cat Williams for that in Anniston, Alabama. And so we stopped there because I wanted to see the alley. We all did. Just stop and see the alley. And looking there, they got a mural of the Greyhound bus there on the side of where the Greyhound station is. And there's a little narrow alley, just narrow enough for a bus to back up in there and pull out. One bus, not two, not three, just one bus. And you can see when they backed in there how them white boys got in the front to block them and then started slashing tires and busting windows. And so the bus just took off. And then you leave that alley and leave town and go down 202, the highway, you're headed toward Birmingham. And they got another marker where they caught the bus because the tires gave out and burned the bus. And there's a highway here. On one side is the marker. You see the marker. This is where the bus got stopped and they burned the bus, National Park Service. And then the highway again. And you look to the right and down a little bit of a graded slope. There's a flat kind of clearing. And we saw 1, 2, 3 little houses, like trailer houses. Like somebody just pulled their trailers up, dumped the trailers and detached the trailer. And now the people live there. 2 flagpoles. And you know what was on the flagpoles? Oh, I wish I were in the land of cotton. Old times there and not forgotten, look away. I thought for a minute I was in rural Maryland, north of Baltimore, but I wasn't. We were in Alabama, and them Confederate flags was flying damn near as prominently as all the U.S. flags. And there are so many U.S. flags. By the way, I got my hands on this the other day. National Museum of African American History and Culture just published another in their series of called Double Exposure, which is like little photograph books. This one is called The American Flag. It's published late 2025, but it came out, I want to say early because I didn't see it last time I was down there, which was about a month ago. I'm like, is this coincidental? And so I'm looking for David Hammond's famous, let's see if I have one of my art books with it in it. No, I don't have one in here, but y'all know that David Hammond's U.S. flag that's in red, black, and green. They have it at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So I'm looking through here like, okay, I guess I'll see that one. Nope, it ain't in here. All I see is red, white, and blue. I'm like, dude, really? Really? Where did David Hammons join? I said, y'all not, but y'all scared? What you scared of? The famous Gordon Parks? Maybe they're not scared. Maybe they are. I don't know. But there were so many American flags in Anniston, Alabama. So many of them in the South. These huge ass flags flying over top of Buc-ee's and all these other pit stop places up and down the highway in the little towns. And I'm like, and then there are all these Confederate flags. It's the same flag. As Minister Farrakhan, who didn't speak at Jesse Jackson's funeral over the arc of the several hours the funeral took place, and he probably is maybe not in advanced age shape to be able to do that publicly, although he did speak at Savior's Day. And I saw some clips of him speaking to Jesse in the last maybe year and a half. But it would have been nice to hear from him. I'll come back to Jackson's funeral in a minute. So leaving, of course, Anniston and headed to Birmingham. I love the South because, as Malcolm X said, if you south of the Canadian border, you in the South. I would go so far as to say if you're in a country where we got trafficked, you in the South in terms of mentality. But the U.S. South has a particular resonance to it. I have a lot more clarity in the South. You understand? A lot more clarity in the South. And so I thought this morning we could start with that pastoral scene, that scene of baseball, and thinking about little black girls comfortable roaming around in a stadium built by old segregationists. A stadium where, as the historian was telling me, as Joe was telling me, on the days that the white teams played, black folks would come and they had to sit in a part of the bleachers that didn't have an overhang, where if the sun was blazing, they just got cooked. And on days where the black barons were playing and the Negro leagues were playing, the white people had to sit in the same section without shade, and the sun cooked them. And thinking about the absurdity of race, this older white man standing there talking to me with this little black girl running around the stadium like she owned it, and mostly white players on the team, but there was one team that came up from Hoover, Alabama. And when the brother came in with his two sons, one son had on his full baseball stuff. He looked like a high school kid. He was maybe 8th or 9th grade. He was young. And so we started talking, and he said, yeah, man, this is the only black team in the tournament this time. I said, oh, that's great, man. And so I'm listening to them talk to some of the other folks. There's a couple of brothers working in the gift shop / history center, because basically this is the South. So they selling stuff, but not really. People are coming in, but they really just sitting around holding court, which I love because I'm right there with them, holding court with them, while I'm, trying to convince them that maybe they want to up the prices on some of these after they sell this one to me. But anyway, so I'm listening to the brother, and he's saying so one of the guys asked the young brother, his son, said, well, what do you play? He said, I'm a center fielder. And I started to turn around and say, oh, I was a center fielder. So we started talking baseball. I was captain of the baseball team in high school. I was a center fielder. I love baseball. And I said, nah, because see, I'd have been there the rest of the day. You know what I'm saying? We'd have been talking there. So, but I wanted to start with that because why can't the world be like that little spot in time and space on a Sunday afternoon in the deeper South in the United States, deep South, Caribbean, Latin America? We'll come back around to that because a lot of people this week seem to think that Kristi Noem got fired. She didn't. She got promoted. But we'll come back to that in a minute. In fact, they're meeting in Miami right now while we're talking. She's now going to take the Department of Homeland Security hemisphere wide. It amazes me how people don't catch the obvious. But at any rate, that way she and Corey Lewandowski can continue their affair all over the hemisphere. You don't need to just confine it to the United States. But yeah, why can't the world be like that space? Of course it can. And the foundation of that space isn't the old white team that the stadium was built for. It isn't even the farm team that Charlie Finley had there, a Birminghamian, where he was developing all these players, including these black players, both speak English and Spanish, who ended up winning the World Series a couple of times in the 1970s, the Oakland Athletics. It's the Negro Leagues. That is the thing they market everywhere. That is the thing that draws people to Rickford Field, where they're going to play the East-West game again this summer. Why can't the whole country be like that? Well, here's the thing. It can. Should it be like that? Yeah. Everybody gets to be who they are. Everybody needs to be who they are. And everybody gets to be who they are in a society where that doesn't bother you. If you can free your mind, you can free the land. And that's really what took me to Atlanta. Again, I want to, now that we've done that, but as Trump and Netanyahu intensify their war against the whole world, as they enhance this war against the whole world, as they reveal to those who may have been unclear and strengthen the clarity of those who were already pretty clear that they are global threats. They are threats to the entire, not only human race, but every living thing on this planet, these two men and those who are in league with them. and those whose actions will be guided and triggered by them, whether it be the Pakistanis who are threatening to come in on the side of their allies in the region, whether it be the Chinese, who so far they just had their next 5-year planning meeting. They did that this week. I'm sure everybody was watching, not. And they celebrated having completed the goals of their last 5-year plan. They plan in these 5-year increments, even as they look as a civilizational construct thousands of years in the past and looking forward. They plan in 5-year increments, and they were serious about that. Xi Jinping is purging all these generals at the same time. And I'm wondering, are you getting rid of the generals who are trying to tell you not to go nuclear? I haven't looked into it as much as I need to understand, perhaps have a hint of what's going on there. As Russia in the last 48 hours has said they not only support Iran, they're going to continue to provide sources and resources to Iran. BP and Bozo are threatening the whole world. Because if you think that brain dead, addled clown, Bozo, won't press a button and use a tactical nuke, you're not paying attention. As that is unfolding now, this week I thought we could center the question of self-determination as a strategy for both resisting oppression and changing this deteriorating social structure of the modern world system. Do I think Bozo is going to use a nuclear weapon? I don't know. Am I sure, though, that the whole world is forming against Bozo and BB? Absolutely, I am. Because even the allies are tepid allies. Canada feels it's got to go along at this point to a moment. But even Mark Carney is like, this is very reluctant. Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister of Spain, is like, you can't land your planes here. And when Bozo threatened him, now the EU is like, hold on, back up, chief, because we don't even know why you're there. As that copper-lipped propaganda Barbie, Carol Lying Levitt, stands and vomits more propaganda, sounding more and more ridiculous, approaching almost Sean Spicer levels of ridiculousness, not to mention smoky eyed Sarah Huckabee, who, by the way, in last Tuesday's primaries in Arkansas, suffered several setbacks as some of her white nationalist allies in the Arkansas legislature lost their reelection bids, primarily because they were supporting Hakkasan's attempt to bring this huge $1.1 billion or $1.2 billion prison to Arkansas. Well, her allies, 2 of them lost. The white nationalists have been taking on water, so don't turn off commercial news, entertainment, mass media, because they'll have you believing all kind of stuff. They're worthless. They're useless. Understand that. You saw some setbacks in North Carolina, too, in the primaries. You're paying attention. The North Carolina, the speaker of the North Carolina State House is in a fight for his life. And last count I saw, yesterday, he was behind by 2 votes to a challenger. And if they knock him out, by the way, they knocked out 3 Democrats who were voting most of the time with Republicans. 2 of them were black, a woman and a man. They gone. Bye, 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 bye. Pulling your blackface John Fetterman act in Raleigh. Well, you won't be doing that anymore because you're out of the paint. The people have had enough. Not enough of the people have had enough, but more and more people are having enough. So, as we think about this, this deteriorating social structure, whether it be on the local level, the state level, the country level, the international level, people have had enough, and more people are having enough. And so I thought this week we talk a little bit about self-determination. We have to draw on this momentum of memory to center, as always, our Africana studies framework as African people, our governance formation, what Angie Porter would call our protocols, how we move through the world with each other, our ways of knowing, how we view ourselves in the world. So a little 5-year-old girl, a little African girl, with what some people would call erroneously in the social structure, Southern hospitality, which is really African hospitality imposed upon the white South, would lead a stranger she don't know around in a place that she's familiar with, but he's not, simply because it's an act of generosity that she's been raised at her young age by her mama and her community to do in a safe space, so that we can not only remember those kind of things in the momentum of memory as we observe them, but pass it on, our movement in memory from generation to generation to generation, to do things to resist this kind of foolishness that's going on an international level, and also to prepare for what can come in its wake. In these living movements, these living institutions, we pose this central question. The central question today we have, the framing question for today: how do we free our minds so that we can liberate our spaces? So it isn't just a handful of spaces here or a space here or a space there, or a mental and emotional and spiritual place and intellectual place like Saturdays and throughout the weeks whenever you're watching this or sitting with it or thinking with us, or 7 days a week in Knarrative and in Nubia and in all the other places, whether it be Mike Harriet Contraband Camp going live once a week, whether it be Roland Martin 7 days a week and he covered the whole funeral, like y'all watched the live stream, whether it be Joy Reid or Mehdi Hassan or you name it, Native Land Pie, whatever. Everybody on Sirius XM across the ideological spectrum, whether it be any of those spaces, those are spaces. How do we free our minds so that we can liberate those spaces, so that we elevate the conversations that we're having, so we're not just taking up space, but so that we literally free the land? And that's where I want to kind of turn to for a moment. The reason I was even in the South was thanks to my dear friends at the Malcolm X commemorative banquet. This is the 35th annual commemorative banquet, and I was grateful to be there. Thanks to Dr. Habib Soyinka, who asked me to come down, and Baba Watani and Baba Kwame and Kalamaris. They approached me and asked me would I come down and serve as a keynote speaker for the banquet. And it's always an honor to do that, particularly with the Malcolm X grassroots movement. Just important folks. And of course, anchoring in so many ways that community, as she refers to it, Mama Aminata Umoja, the House of Umoja. Mama Aminata, Baba Akinyele Umoja, Baba AK. It's always good to see them. My sister Rosalind Satchel, who served as the mistress of ceremonies Saturday night, and I'm not embarrassed to say I was a little tired because we had been out late with Highly and Shriek, and it was just a smashing success as we talked about last week. So after we finished here, I quickly left, got on the plane, got down to Atlanta, and once I got there, Reba Dr. Kelsey picked me up, and we was on the move. And shout out to her, of course, and to the entire Kelsey family who came. Baba Mariba Kelsey actually gave some opening remarks to get our minds level set. And there were so many highlights on Saturday night. The Colombo Academic and Cultural Institute, the young people there, from the smallest to the oldest, all through the teenagers, the New African Scouts put on a demonstration display. They opened with a libation. I'd never seen anything like it. I told my mom and Nada, I said, everybody need to do libation that way, because they all participated and got us to participate. It was really quite moving. And they also gave out these awards, Kuji Chagalia Award, Service Awards, to Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Here's of course H. Rap Brown. He is known, this brother whose physical body died in captivity, but who mentally, intellectually, spiritually, his space was free. He was free. And Mama Karima, his partner, his wife, herself an attorney, accepted the award on behalf of the family. Queen Mother Asada Shakur, who's made transition, whose physical body, of course, was gave out in freedom in Cuba. She also, if she is there, represents her family living in Atlanta, of course, and her spirit was free as well. And then finally, the good brother Sheikh Baba Bilal Sunni Ali, his whole family was there to receive the recognition on his behalf. A more recent ancestor, ring this bell, Fuji Chagalia, Self-Determination Awards. And so that was a highlight for me. And if you don't know Sheikh Baba Bilal Sunni Ali, he was a master cultural meaning maker, master nation builder, National Committee to Defend Political Prisoners, key organizer of the Black Panther Party in New York City, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, a musician as well, a member of the Midnight Bands. If you know Gil Scott Heron and Brian Jackson, he was known as the Spirit. Sheikh Baba Sunni, Bilal Sunni Ali was known as the Spirit of the Midnight Band. So if you know the songs, Liberation Song, Red, Black, and Green, that's on the album First Minute of a New Day, and Essex on From South Africa to South Carolina, he helped compose and write those songs. So, I mean, it was quite a moment. And so I begged them to let the Kujila Chaga Aliyah Awards go last. Roz and I was begging, let them go last, but the elders said, no, we want you to go last. And yes, and we should talk about that too, Prop, before we get out of here. Cause like I said, if y'all not subscribed to Sirius XM and not tuned to 126, you're absolutely missing. Because like you said last week, and then, had the conversation with Baba Paul coming back from Cuba. And I actually, one of the folks who traveled with Paul and Roz was came to my class Thursday. I would expect her. I hadn't seen her in a long time. She had come up to tell me about the trip. I said, oh yeah, Paul was just on with Karen on Monday on her show. So again, these are the Africans who are self-determining. Very important to know that. And so, but we couldn't convince them for me not to go after them. So, but I always got my eye on the clock, so I know how it works. So I told him, I said, okay, I'll go as programmed, but I won't be very long because we've had the highlight of the evening. So as I sat there thinking about these things, and let me see, do I have it? I know I do. I just got to figure out what I did with it. Let me put it here. I was reading the paper this morning. The new, you see here. Yeah. Yes. Uh, Last time I was in that room, we were at Pascal's, those, the legendary Pascal's restaurant in Atlanta. Last time we were there, I was there with Brother Mowley, and it was good to see Baba Mowley, his mother, my man Kurt Young, Dr. Young over there in Clark, Atlanta. I mean, the room was just full of people who some of them hadn't seen for many years. So it was good to be with everybody. Last time we were in that room, we remember back last fall was the National Conference of Black Lawyers, Baba Mowley being the president. And at the time, Sister Shoshana Shakur, who is the sister of the great Chokwe Lumumba, was on the verge of seeing the publication of her memoir about her work, her brother's work, and that whole generation from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up into the arts of freedom fighters and self-determination leaders, the New African Independence Movement, for that, the Republic of New Africa. And so the book just came out a few weeks ago. It's called Memories of My Revolutionary Brother, Chokwe Lumumba, Shoshana Shakur. The good brother Edward Onasi helped out in getting this to print. And it is absolutely a must read. Here's Baba Chokwe Lumumba with the good brother, Baba, or as he would say, brother Imari Obadeli, Dr. Imari Obadeli. He and his brother, of course, the Obadeli brothers, Amari and Gaidi Obadeli, after the assassination of Malcolm X, coming out of Detroit. These Detroit Negroes, as we were talking about on the air a couple of days ago when somebody called in yesterday from Detroit. But, that's the spirit of these Africans who were there. And the cry of the new African independence movement, the cry of the Republic of New Africa, that self-determining cry, when you've met somebody who is affiliated with those formations, those self-determining formations, you've met them when they greet you with free the land. And you repeat that 3 times, free the land, free the land, free the land by any means necessary. Coming, of course, from Malcolm X, free the land. So then you say, hey, what's going on, brother? Free the land, free the land, free the land, self-determination. And so for the few minutes that I did speak, I said, I'm grateful for being included in this ritual, in this annual ritual, sitting here with these freedom fighters whose family members gave everything physically, but who in giving everything physically freed themselves because their minds and spirits were free. I'm grateful to be included as a brother in this community. And I told them my greatest joy in life is, at this stage in my life, being able to help people know other people. I'm guided in many ways by W.E.B. Du Bois's observation in The Souls of Black Folk, which, if you remember, we read a couple of years ago in Nubia, chapter for chapter. His chapter on Alexander Crummell and others. When he wrote of Alexander Crummell, who by then was an ancestor, who had such an impact on him since the first time he saw Alexander Crummell, when Crummell came to speak at Wilberforce, when Du Bois was a professor there, he said, The shame in life is not that people die poor, that people make mistakes in life, that people can sometimes do evil things. After all, who is good? He said, no, the shame is that people know so little of other people. So wherever I go, given the privilege, given the honor, given the responsibility, really it's a responsibility, because after the ritual on Saturday night, we're standing around outside the restaurant talking, and some of the young people, I was standing there talking with them. It was actually Richard, no, it's actually Satchel's birthday, Rosalind's son. It's a happy birthday. He's getting to the age where he's considering colleges. His mom went to Howard, so they questioned Howard. He said, I like Morehouse too. It's okay. Well, you always got a chair at the Negro College, brother. You want to come up and hang out with us, anytime you want to come. Your mom send you up there, I got you. But standing there with the young people talking, these teenagers and these early 20-somethings, and we were talking about, just the importance of memory keeping. And I was just congratulating them on how remarkable they are as young people, how they've been brought into, born and raised in, suffused in this free space. And, they were just telling me that to them, I represent in part what in some ways John Clark and Andy Thompson, Jacob Carruthers, and Norma Ani and all them, Akanyeli Umoja, all them represent to me. And that was a heavy thing to hear. I mean, I was obviously very humbled by it, but also, as I said, I said, that just strengthens my resolve to earn that trust. And I think that's how we have to look at it. When young people have a certain expectation of you, you have to earn that. You should never sit back on it. If they think you are a thing that is helping our community because of how you've moved through the world, you got to be that much more deliberate about moving through the world to earn that. I don't know if there's anything in my life that I believe more deeply than that. That's a trust. That's a trust. So it's my obligation, if I encounter a Nolan, to tell everybody else and to let her know and let her mama know and let everybody know I'm in a space to connect. So last Saturday in those conversations, I said, I'm grateful for the inclusion and the recognition as a brother in this community. And I'm also keenly aware that, whatever I say in any public space is my attempt, however flawed, to earn that recognition with work. And many times through a speech act, an act of speech. And there's so many in that room that I would have preferred to listen to in a ritual moment like that than hear my voice talk. So if I will be here for 15, 20 minutes, not no 30, 40 or 50 minutes or hour or 90 minutes like we usually try to do here, then it's something I got to say. Then I got to be able to say it in a way that resonates, not because it was my original thought, but because I'm constantly thinking about how can we see each other, because that is the thing that is the biggest shame, that people should know more of people. You bomb a bunch of school children, you mass murderer, BB, you and your friend Bozo. You kill people with bombs our tax dollars paid for. That's not we. I didn't do it. You did it. But if I don't stop you, then the blood is on my hands. And here's the bulletin, so we can stop you. And as Black folk might have said in Ebonics, it ain't no thing once we get our minds right. Because so many more of us than it is you. You really are gathering on illusion. Ask your billionaire friend Larry Ellison, who I saw Oracle is laying off thousands of people right now, following in the wake of Jack, whose new company post Twitter, laying off people. Why? Because they're still trying to figure out how we're going to make this money on AI, trying to raise and catch. And you done guaranteed your personal wealth, haven't you? You insane fascist. You done guaranteed your personal Ellison family wealth to buy up all this mass media stuff as if somehow you will control our images. And all we have to do to completely neutralize you is free our minds. And then your money is worth exactly what it should be worth. Vamoose, poof, it ain't worth nothing. So those few minutes I spent Saturday night on the last night of so-called Black History Month, or Blackest History Month, Thanks. Shout out to the Nubians who bought tables to support the Malcolm X grassroots movement and to support the work of that organization, and also the community organization that it partnered with, and also Quilombo, because every penny spent on Saturday night is going into those institutions that help our people, these independent institutions, these self-determining institutions. And the smoke was still rising from the initial bombings of Iran last Saturday night, another desperate act of a dying formation. And as I mentioned, Malcolm X spoke a lot of imperialism. And it's clear that the world impacts us, but we're not separate from the world, which means we can act in the world. Our entreaties to go out on behalf of those harmed in the wake of another murderous adventure by this country's fascist, racist federal regime, and those silent in the wake, we have a mission that we must now fulfill. And you know, I said a few words thinking about Malcolm X and Assata Shakur and Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, and Sheikh Bilal Sunni Ali. The state is crumbling. In the case of Assata Shakur, a prisoner who broke out. In the case of H. Rap Brown, put up on trumped up charges, put up on straight lies, and incarcerated physically for the rest of his life. But, you know, as his partner said, people would call and be like, you know, how are you, Imam? And Imam would say, I'm fine. What can I do for you? Man, you're in a Supermax prison. Yeah, my body's in a Supermax prison, but what can I do for you? I'm praying for you. I'm thinking about you. My mind is free. So it led me to a moment to talk about, for a moment on Saturday, the question of what it means to say free to land. I did not have this when we were in session on Saturday. It hadn't come out yet. I received this from Paris. This comes in from overseas. It's a magazine I subscribe to called The Funambulist. This is Funambulist. It's called The No State Solution. This is the latest issue, the March, April 2026 issue. The No State Solution. Here's the question, can liberation ever take the form of a state?
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
The magazine, because I know a little bit about what it takes to put a magazine together, you have to plan that out several months in advance, right? You don't know what's coming. You know, this magazine was probably produced before there was this bombing, this quote unquote war.
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So you subscribing to it because this current iteration that we're in of the world, everything has to be right now, right now, right now, right now. You subscribe to a magazine that has been conceived months prior. You get it in the mail from overseas. How is it not quote unquote dated?
Well, you know as much or more, really, in a lot of ways, a lot more than I do about these schedules. In order for something like this to be topical now, what would have to be, in your thinking, how deep, how long would the people writing have to have been thinking about these things?
I raised this and I'm smiling because I know probably most people in here could not conceive of getting a magazine in the mail that comes out, you know, March, April, and they probably don't understand the power of that. But whoever's producing that has not futuristic vision, but has sat in the cycles of history long enough to know to produce the thing that will animate whoever's reading it at the time to understand what's coming next. And I think that there's a brilliance in that. So, and more of this, and I'm glad. So I'm gonna pop out, but please hold that up again and tell us why you actually subscribe to it.
Because these are long range thinkers. And as you know, we're weaving in and out as we have this conversation, as we do every week. You know, there are countless people. I won't say thousands or tens or hundreds, thousands or millions, but there are so many more people who know the names Paul Coates and Rosemary Mealy. Certainly Paul Coates, as you in the conversation, than before y'all got into deeper conversations, who perhaps prior to listening might have said, We can't go to Cuba. Cuba said, no, you can go to Cuba. In other words, free your mind, and then you will free the land. So when I'm subscribing to magazines like this, the people who write this magazine have virtually nothing ideologically in common with the people who write this magazine. The people who write foreign affairs ain't got, but I gotta read them both and every other magazine I've subscribed to. And people say, well, can't you get them online? Oh yeah, this one doesn't have a digital component in the same way that this one does. Most places, the New Yorker, New York Magazine, the Atlantic, Vanity Fair, all the other magazines I subscribe to, all the other journals I subscribe to, many of them have digital. The newspapers, Financial Times, New York Times, Washington Post, not the Post anymore, F the Post. I can still get it through, other places. DC Public Library, you got a library card, you can do that. Wall Street Journal, which is, interestingly enough, the only newspaper daily that Howard subscribes to. Fine, no problem. Get your library card, your local library, you can read all the newspapers and many of the magazines. The reason that I like the physical ones is because I like to go places and sit up in the corner somewhere. Y'all saw I'm sitting in the baseball stadium. I keep my bag. People say, oh, let me carry your bag. I say, no. Do you ever ask a woman to carry her pocketbook? No. Then you shouldn't ask me to carry my pocketbook. Because my books are in my pocketbook. You know what I'm saying? So I need my pocketbook anyway, because I'm be sitting somewhere while y'all doing something. What you doing? I'm good. Y'all go ahead. I like the physical, because the physicality of a thing marks you at the moment. When I got this, I wouldn't even open it. When I saw the cover, I just held it in my hand as I walked around the rest, because I'm getting ready to take this on. If I didn't get nothing else, out of Rick Wood Stadium gift shop, this was worth the trip. This was worth leaving Atlanta to get this. Off of this right here. In fact, I'm so moved by this picture that I might get that blown up in frame. I just love this picture. You know what I'm saying? These Africans right here playing white Major League Baseball, but they got these Negro League jerseys on. And because I know a little something about their lives through the interviews with them and reading and listening to them, I never met either one of these brothers. But when Ken Griffey Jr. said that he was in the dugout with the Yankees, and his father, who was playing for the Yankees at the time, was in the dugout, and the people at the Yankees told him as a young boy to get off the field, and then they sitting in the dugout. And Ken Griffey Jr. said, my father told me, look at third base. And Greg Nettles, the third baseman's son, was taking ground balls at third base. And Ken Griffey was told to get off the field. And his father was just like, remember that. And then when it came time when he was a free agent, and the Yankees came to him and said, we're going to back up the truck and give you more money than God, Ken Griffey Jr. was like, no. And there's a famous clip y'all see young on YouTube where Ken Griffey is signing autographs at Yankee Stadium, and a little boy says to him, oh, Ken Griffey, kid, why don't you come play for the Yankees? And Ken Griffey looks at the little boy and says, I don't care if it was only New York Yankees were the only team left in Major League Baseball. If they were the only team left in Major League Baseball, I'd retire. I said, shit, man, I might hit this Friday. You know how long that boy probably been waiting to put on that Monarchs. That brother has been waiting to put on that Monarchs jersey. When Ken Griffey, he wore his hat backward. And they'd be like, why do you wear your hat backward? He said, because when I was a little boy, my father played with the Cincinnati Reds, and his hat was too big. And when I would put it on as a little boy, if the bill would come over my eyes. And he said, all I wanted to do was wear my daddy's hat. So I had to turn around backward so I could have a hat on. I'm saying, see, this is genealogy. That's movement and memory. So I'm saying, sitting there, so I wouldn't even open it in the store. I waited until Nolan showed me where to sit down. I sat down, and that's when I opened it. Because whenever I open that magazine, I will remember where I was when I opened it. The physicality is very important to me because it's a mnemonic device. It links you. I'm not scrolling because when you scrolling, the screen never changes. Only the words on the screen. I'm thumbing through. So this one, I read an issue. I forget. Let me think. I might have been in South Africa when I first saw this magazine. And so I immediately, no, that was Pambazuka. Where was I when I saw this? No. I was in a stationery shop in Philadelphia. My good friend John, who's Iranian, who's now retired.
Ironically.
Yeah. That was years ago. The shop isn't there anymore. April 50. It might still be there in West Philly, in the alley behind Walnut Street on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania. I would go down there and get coffee because, them people from that region, they drink coffee, not that hot brown water that they peddle in the United States, which they just had disgust for. So I get up in the morning, and he had all kind of magazines. So I subscribe to it now because obviously I moved from Philadelphia years ago. And so, but I read it because, as you said, these are writers whose ideas they have let percolate for months, sometimes years, just as the writers in Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs is a magazine that they read at the State Department. Foreign Affairs is a magazine that the people who plotting on taking over the world or maintaining control over the states read. Okay. This is a magazine read by the people trying to destroy those people's ideas and remake the world. But they share in common that they think about things a long time. Between the books, which are getting increasingly more and more dumb, I'm like, how many more books can be written now with fewer words on the pages? And so but obviously people out there writing books for different reasons. Profit, trying to catch lightning in a bottle, this kind of thing. Some of them longer range. I just got this book last week. It's called Marked by Time. This is an interesting book. This is Robert Sampson's book, How Social Change Has Transformed Crime and the Life Trajectories of Young Americans. He's saying, this is very interesting, very provocative. He said between 1970 and 1920, the United States experienced a dramatic rise in crime and incarceration, followed by an unexpected decline. Along with plummeting violence came reductions in substance use, car accidents, child poverty, and lead exposure. By 2020, incarceration rates hit a 25-year low, with African Americans benefiting the most. Yet these positive shifts have not registered in public discourse or policies, which continue to rely on outdated studies and reductive narratives of moral character and personal responsibility. I picked this book up. He's actually at Harvard University. Interesting guy. He's a professor there, affiliated research professor at American Bar Foundation. His research, he did a 30-year longitudinal study of over 1,000 people in Chicago, children, over multiple cohorts. And what he discovered is when you are born is more predictor of the crime rate than where you are born. He said, strikingly, children born in the mid-1980s face twice the likelihood of arrest by their mid-20s than those born 10 years later. The crime rate been going down. We've been saying that all the time. People be listening to Bozo. Anyway, but what I'm saying is this took him 30 years to research and write. The magazine, 6 months to a year, some of these articles. Right? But in the magazine, and this is where it comes right down to it, the things we're reading now, the newspapers, the thing we're watching on television, the bombs, the Irans, that ain't no news to foreign affairs. They've been talking about that for decades. And here's where it comes down, where I really want to kind of begin as we begin making the turn today. Can liberation ever take the form of a state? The idea of the nation state being the villain, y'all have heard me say that many times. That's the conversation people have been having for years. So this ain't late breaking news. The no state solution. The solution for humanity is to get rid of the nation state. It's artificial to begin with. Every time I hear somebody say, "Oh, this is bad for the American people," or "the American people don't agree with this," or I just start laughing. There's no such thing as the American people. This is a country, which means a state apparatus, a social structure with many different nations in it. This is a place where a lot of different places are in it. And so when you engage in an act of self-determination, like the folks in Malcolm X grassroots movement engaged in, most of them got U.S. passports. Most of them work in the United States of America and do all things like that. But their connections, their relationships, their knowing of each other is a completely different frequency. I was watching something the other day. I sent it to some people. Miles Davis being interviewed. And this white man asked Miles Davis, he said, "Miles, you've been interviewed. In interviews, you said that if you only had an hour left to live, you would like to spend it choking the life out of a white man." Miles is sitting there. Miles is sitting there looking at the guy, right? You can imagine, Miles Davis had that stone face and he's old, he's that ebony visage, them sharp features, them Nile Valley, that nilotic nose and chin, them little narrow eyes. He looking. He said, "Yeah, maybe I should say 2 hours because it might take longer." I'm like,
he said, "I want a week." He said, "Give me a week."
Give me a week. Did you see that right? Give me a week. You gonna torture the guy? And then so the white man, undaunted, but certainly I'm sure at that point maybe a little pee came out or something. You gotta be scared, right? He said, "So, why? I mean, And Miles Davis is telling him about, being black and having to suffer this and these indignities. And so he asks, can you tell me about one of them? And Miles looks, and you can see it isn't anger. You can almost see him going back in time. And anybody, if you read Quincy Troop's biography of Miles Davis, if you've seen any documentaries on Miles Davis, then one of the most famous events when he got challenged with that, remember he was standing outside that nightclub where he was playing, and the cops come and tell him to move along. He's out there smoking a cigarette. He tells the cop, I'm working here. Next thing you know, the cop then pulled out the stick and hit him in the head. He's bleeding. There's a famous picture of him with blood on his face, coming down his forehead and on his shirt, and he got a handkerchief. And you could almost see Miles Davis back in that moment as he's listening to this white man. Could you tell me about? He's like, nah. And then he just, rather than relate any incident, he talks about the impact of not being able to just be free. Not just, man, I'm thinking, man. So I'm saying in that moment, I'm thinking about that in the context of even reading this. Funambulist is one who performs on a tightrope or a slack rope. So a funambulist is somebody who's walking a tightrope. We black in the social structure. We walking a tightrope. Miles Davis walking a tightrope right there. Do I choke this man right now? Do I answer this man right now? I'm on a tightrope. So the funambulist is people on a tightrope. And in that process, of course, he didn't choke the guy, which is, cool and not cool, because he got to us, those of us in the governance formation who know ways of knowing, we understand that act of cultural meaning making, where Miles Davis, in terms of movement and memory, was tapping into his memory. He said everything he needed to say to us without that man ever knowing what he was talking about, because that man was in the social structure. You don't even know what Miles Davis just said without saying it, and some of the stuff he did say by saying it. But the no state solution is very clear. And the reason I bring it up right now is because there is an article. This is a special issue. Most of the magazine is about this. There's this guy, William Anderson, who's got some interesting things to say, but he's got one called in this article, in this issue, The Lingering Threat of Black Zionism. What does that mean? Well, Marcus Garvey, and of course, this is the Black Star Line, Steve Stock line. We've talked about that many times. I got a hoodie with one of these representation of the Black Star Line, Marcus Garvey's steamship, Marcus and Amy Garvey's shipping line. They had multiple ships on it, but they talk about how he's writing about Anderson. This is after I got this past week, after I come back from the South, the deeper South. Technically, I'm still in the South, but how Garvey and them, their aspiration for physical land is short-sighted. Yes, we need a place to stay. Yes, we need a place to put our stuff. Yes, we live in a world where that's important. The deeds to houses and businesses and land and this kind of thing, all very important. But what if beyond that, the real question is the question of place, the question of how we convene in time and space at any given moment. So that, for example, in this Marked by Time that I mentioned a minute ago, this is about prisons. He opens, Professor Sampson opens this with 3 epigraphs, framing quotes from that frame the book. The first one is from Heraclitus, who is a Greek philosopher. It says, no man ever steps in the same river twice. It is not the same river, and he's not the same man. Then he goes to a demographer, from 1965, Norman Ryder, who says, the members of any cohort are entitled to participate in only one slice of life, their unique location in the stream of history. Because it embodies a temporally specific version of the heritage, each cohort is differentiated from all the others. So whenever you're born, you're different than the people before you. You're different than the people who come after you. That's a very Western worldview. The third of the 3, now he brings in the black people because it's kind of chic to quote black people. Does he quote a black philosopher? No. Does he quote a black academic? No. He quotes Albert King. So, got the blues man. Now you put the black stuff in. It's like putting Toni Morrison on after you talked about the Greeks and Shakespeare. Then you stick Toni Morrison or August Wilson there and say that's equal. It's not equal. Then he quotes Albert King, born under a bad sign. I've been down since I began to crawl. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all. That's cute. What if he had done this? Instead of the first quote from Heraclitus on not stepping in the same river twice, which we've heard a million times, take one from the ancient Egyptians. Take a phrase in ancient Egyptian, as Mario Beatty would translate it for us, or Theophilo Benga, or me when I got my chops back up, but you got to rely on Beatty now because he's the best student of his generation. What if Mario translates? There's a phrase in ancient Egyptian that translates as "my heart of different ages," meaning I'm not the same person I was as a baby. I'm not the same person as I was as a 17-year-old running up now playing center field for Hillsborough High School. I'm not the same person I was the first time I met Jesse Jackson, the student body president, a few years later at Tennessee State. I'm not the same person I was when I walked across the stage at Ohio State Law School and wouldn't shake the Attorney General's hand because I considered him a racist. I'm not the same person I was when I entered graduate school in Philadelphia. I'm not the same person I was when we started Philadelphia Freedom School, and Miss Collier Clark, Bernard Lafayette's once partner, was there helping us shape this context by bringing in the movement, the spirit, the memory of the freedom schools and the freedom summer of 1964. I'm not the same person. However, I am the same person I was all those places. The Egyptians understood my heart of different ages. Come on, Herodotus. You didn't stay long enough to the Egyptians to understand that you're different and the same. The idea that somehow every generation is different from every generation ain't no breaking news, but we are all of the same genealogy. So what if the next quote, instead of this political scientist, this demographer from 1965, Norman Ryder, maybe pulled from Amiri Baraka and his famous 1967 essay, The Changing Same. We are different and we are the same. We are connected, but you got to have a different worldview to see that. And then you can bring in Albert King and connect him to something different. Then you can bring in Sable Campbell or Toni Morrison or August Wilson or Ta-Nehisi Coates and tie them to something that goes back to classical Africa, the momentum of memory. That is how you free your mind. And once you free your mind, you can free the place. Sometimes the place ain't a physical place, which is what I was talking about Saturday night with the Malcolm X Grassroots Coalition. I said, when we say free the land, we all know what we mean. We evoke Chokwe Lumumba, we evoke Amari Obadeli, we evoke the good sister Nkechi Taifa, who will be in conversation with Public Conversation week after next here in DC. We evoke all of that. But what if the land isn't just the physical land? Because after all, BB is not from that region that he's trying now to conquer everything. That whole nut job, Mike Huckabee, who claims to be interpreting the Old Testament of the Bible by saying Israel, this is greater Israel. You think they're invading Lebanon, chasing Hezbollah? No, they want the whole region. Do you understand? Most of the bombs, almost quarters of the bombing, hitting Dubai. Dubai screaming bloody murder. The UAE, Qatar, the Dubai, all them places that's pumping that cat in a dead man's suit, Jared Kushner, and his little running buddy without any political appointment confirmed by the United States government, the federal government, Steve Witkoff, the crypto king. Them two is out there on a fantasy tour because their fantasy is to take everything in the world. Them two is going to run it through the imaginary currency of Bitcoin or whatever else they making up, meme coin, Bitcoin, whatever, all that. And BB wants the land off of a lie, off of a straight imagination. And whether it be this funky, crazy ass minister that the runt Rooster Pete Hegseth has lodged up at the Pentagon, so much so that rank and file military people pushing back because they getting messages from people talking about this is a holy war, basically a divine, it's mandated by Jesus. No, do you know what their philosophy is? Yes, we got to help Israel. Why? Because in order for Jesus to come back, all the Jews got to be in Israel. And when he come back, he going to give them a chance to become Christians. And if they don't say they're going to be Christians, he going to send them to hell too. It's the deepest anti-Jewish mandate. But what it is not, in terms of Judaism, every Jew not a Zionist. So when Anderson in Fundamentalist is writing that there's a black form of Zionism, that Marcus Garvey and them wanted Africa for the Africans, meaning literally the soil, he is absolutely right. Where I would probably depart with him from is how he's thinking through the critique of that. We live in a Western worldview that has everything anchored in land. But land is just a metaphor, not even a metaphor. Land is kind of a proxy in many ways for place. Because sometimes you can't go back to the literal place where you came into existence. The ancient Egyptian book of not Taotep. Which one? Where's my, where are you? Let me think. Anyway, it'll have to come to me. I'm trying to remember. Oh, okay, here we go. Sinaway, the story of Sinaway, where Sinaway leaves Kemet and then comes back to Kemet. And the directive from the government is come back to the black land. It's the place where you came into existence. Kiss the ground, come to the great gate. mingle with your friends. That's the place you came into existence. So what I said Saturday night is sometimes the land is a place, and sometimes that place is simply where we have convened. Right now, it's in this big room at Pascal's. And everybody here is representing people from other places. For Imam Al-Jamin, for H. Rap Brown, it wasn't the prison they had him locked in for decades. It was the place of his mind and his comrades. What we see is that these relationships that we enjoy with freeing our minds, they allow us to create the place and convene the place wherever we are. You know, it was interesting. We all watched, I hope everybody got a chance to see a little bit of the funeral of Jesse Louis Jackson, the public funeral, the House of Hope, 10,000 seater. And it was full. Several things. I mean, I won't go through obviously the whole thing because we're getting ready to wrap up in a second. But, you know, what moved me was seeing these Africans convene. And I was so happy, Baba J. And hopefully you sleeping in, brother, because that was a long day yesterday. But you saw everybody was in black. In the front row, you got the Jackson family sitting center in the front row. Then there's a little aisle, looked like it might have been 2 feet, if that. Then you see the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, and his wife. You see the good brother Brandon Johnson, his wife, his partner, sitting there. So all the top brass is there. You have the Jackson family in front. Then you see, you know, Biden, Clinton, Obama, and them. Who's sitting on the corner in that next section? As I said, J.B. Pritzker, 2 feet away from him, their knees almost touching. Who's sitting on the corner next to the Jackson family, between the governor and the Jackson family? Jeremiah Wright. That was beautiful. It's good to see you, Baba J, looking sharp. I seen that purple vest. I know you sons of blood and thunder went out there and had that ritual. Roland show. You was out there joking. All the cues. Hell of a ritual. I know y'all had an incredible Omega service on Thursday night because we saw y'all lined up going in, saw the former president of Chicago State, Wayne Watson. Mario used to work with him when he was at Chicago State. There, all the cues were there, and we seen you with your cue, your Omega Sci-Fi. I know you're gonna throw up. I'm not about to do that because I don't want you beating me up. But the point is this: speaker after speaker was quite beautiful. Isaiah Thomas, and then Barack Obama got up there, and for those of y'all know where I'm going with this. You know, this is why I call him the chocolate wonder. I wonder how y'all don't see it. And I wonder if he thinks we're that naive. He paid tribute to Jackson in a way that didn't quite get to know him, know me, but got close enough to say, okay, that's acceptable. Because I know you're never gonna say it. But when he started talking about that it was Jesse Jackson's 84 campaign and Harold Washington's campaign, which of course we talked about a few weeks ago, they drew him to Chicago. That was beautiful. And then he started naming the preachers. He started naming all these preachers. Then he named, he said, even some crazy priest named Flegger, because Father Flegger had spoken, Michael Flegger, 10 toes down. I rocks with Father Flegger, no question. You know who he didn't name? Free your mind, free your place. Y'all can't see the chocolate wonder. I said, man, there have been people I've had knocked down, drag out ideological fights with. There have been people who I don't know or think that I would ever reconcile with them. But I'm going to tell you, if they did something for me, or if they did something more importantly for our people, I would never disrespect them by not calling their name if I was in their face. Never. And anybody who wants to defend it, anybody who wants to justify it, I'm always open to be persuaded differently. I could see perhaps if it was no, I couldn't see it in any circumstance, but I damn sure couldn't see it in a ritual like that. In a ritual like that. See, you know, old folks used to say character is what you do when ain't nobody looking. It's also what you do sometimes when everybody is looking. And I understand, first of all, Bill Clinton should have got up there and said, you know, we kneecapped Jesse Jackson. We had to pull the whole Democratic Party away from the direction Jackson was going, even though if it weren't for Jackson, I probably wouldn't have been able to get the plurality I got. You know, I mean, it's all kind of things that could have been said. But in that moment for Barack Obama, it'd have been one thing if he had named no preachers, but he name checked half the damn stadium, including all them preachers, and Jeremiah Wright sitting next to the governor of the state. You did that shit on purpose, my little friend. And I know y'all love that man because you don't know his policies. I'm not just talking about the domestic policy. I'm talking about the foreign policies. If you want to look at Iran, if you want to look at Libya, if you want to look at all the bombing, Bozo has bombed 8 countries in the world since he came back January last year. But if you want to have a conversation about Barack Obama, I think you're probably going to have to wait another generation or two because we simply don't have our minds free enough to be able to have that conversation. But I ain't like that. Now, I'll move on from the chocolate wonder and go to the president of Colombia. The president of Colombia was there. It's interesting. He spoke, Gustavo Petro, but I'm not sure that the people knew who he was. Because when the brother introduced him, there was kind of some tepid applause, and then he spoke in Spanish, had an interpreter, and then they was rushing him to wrap it up. He came after the former vice president, Kamala Harris, who gave some good remarks. But again, these politicians didn't quite get to where they needed to get to talk about the fact that no him, no us, which means no civil rights and human rights movement, because Jesse Jackson didn't do that alone. We're not going to go back to Jesse Jackson in that context. Y'all should go back and look at the conversation we had. Even though it was incomplete, it was enough to give people breadcrumbs. But then here comes the only president who spoke at Jesse Jackson's funeral is Gustavo Petro in terms of current presidents. He's the president of Colombia. He is not, by the way, going to Miami. That's what I'm going to talk about in a minute, what's going on in this week in the world as we kind of close up. But Petro spoke on Jackson expanding rights for Afro-descended people in the world, including the country he's the president of. As you know, the vice president of Colombia, Masquez, is Afro-Colombian. And listening to Petro as he spoke there, Petro could be my Uncle AB. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely got some of the blood of Africa in his veins, in addition to indigenous and Spanish and everything else. And I'm saying, but then they rushing him so they can get to the next song. And what's the next song? We Shall Overcome, the American Negro. I mean, it was a beautifully up-tempo version. It's the president of Colombia. He done come to this country. He's beefing with Bozo and his crew. And now, I just thought it was interesting in terms of a moment of governance structure, a governance structure moment where you get a chance to see not only who we are to each other, but who we are to each other in a ritual context of movement and memory. And that's a very important thing to take a moment to think about. Because if you're not thinking about it, you could mess around and not see what's in front of your face. I think it's a moment that we should probably spend some time talking about another time, but let me just move on right quick. This week, of course, and this has become a kind of regular moment for us on once a week to kind of check some of the stuff that's going on. We saw those elections. I mentioned what happened in North Carolina and in Arkansas, Kentucky, young Dan Cameron, the man who would not defend Breonna Taylor, but defended his killers, her killers. He's running for Senate. He's going to try to get that Mitch McConnell seat. I trust that people in Kentucky will rise up, organize, register to vote, go to the ballot box and break his political back once and for all. It is your duty. And in Texas, of course, that was the big story, Tallarico versus Crockett. Didn't quite get enough voters out to get Jasmine Crockett across the line, but now everybody got to coalesce around Tarico and make Tallarico and make sure that this fascist Cornyn isn't reelected, or a guy who makes Cornyn look like a damn apostle of peace, that slack-eyed racist attorney general, Ken Paxton, who is purebred fascist. A religious fascist, a religious zealot will be sitting in that seat. Tallarico, hey, and yes, it's true. They tried to hang AIPAC on Jasmine Crockett, and they didn't talk enough about the fact that Tallarico got money from people who got money from, what's her name? Adelson, because she's casino queen in Texas. Sure. But here's the bottom line. We got to be smart. We got to free our minds so that we can move through and try to make sure that we can advance a little bit incrementally. The vote is just one tool in the toolbox. People talking about Kristi Noem got fired. Did she get fired? Yeah, she got swapped out for a man who makes her look like Einstein, Mark Wayne Mullen. In addition to having them two names jammed together as his first name, MMA fighter. Who knows? Maybe on July 4th at the President of the United States' big ass wrestling match on the White House lawn, maybe Mark Wayne Mullen will take his shirt off and go all Bobby Kennedy with some jeans on and get him a folding chair. And say, did y'all see that folding chair, by the way, when I was sitting at Rick Wood right behind home plate? It was a white folding chair. I'm like, who put that chair there? Because you know the whole staff, the grounds crew is black. Anyway, just cracked me up. But maybe Mark Wayne Mullen will have a folding chair to slam on somebody back if he's confirmed. Because remember, you can't just appoint somebody DHS secretary. He had to be confirmed. But I expect the white National Senate will do it. But more interesting to me, the story, in fact, ain't her getting out of Homeland Security. No. She has been made the liaison to Bozo's latest fever dream, crazy ass thought. something called the Shield of the Americas. While we are here right now, the presidents of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guyana, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, and damn it, Trinidad and Tobago are all in Miami with Kristi Noem and Bozo at the first meeting of what they're calling the Shield of the Americas. You know who's not there? Petro. He was at Jesse Jackson's funeral. You know who else is not there? Lula da Silva, the biggest economy in Latin America. He's in Brazil. You know who's not there? Delcy Rodriguez, who is in Venezuela, who they are putting more and more pressure on. That little slick back here. I mean, every time I see Doug Burgum, the Secretary of the Interior, I'm thinking, do you use Murray's? Because he's got his hair slicked back and he got that little duck slick back in the back. I'm like, you got some kind of product in your hair. You rancid. Anyway, Burgum was down there in Venezuela this week with Delcy Rodriguez, pressuring her about the oil, the minerals, and all that stuff, because the whole thing is a shake now. Venezuela and Iran, the private companies, that's what they want. They're trying to get in there and harvest all this stuff. It's geopolitics too, as I was talking about last week in Foreign Affairs magazine, trying to box China in. They'll never be able to do it. China is sitting back again, as is Russia. Like, okay, we're going to see what's going to happen. I'm not going to get too deep into that. I may make a few more comments before we close. But the reason I'm coming to this is that it's also been reported. I read a couple of articles this week about them, quote unquote, building a portfolio on Delcy Rodriguez. Yeah, because they couldn't put that white woman who gave her Nobel medal to Bozo in the White House. They could not put Machado in immediately. But she announced this week that she's coming back to Venezuela. You know what that means, don't you? Yeah, they're going to try to take out Delcy Rodriguez. Huh? So now the pliant commercial news, entertainment, mass media is starting to talk about corruption and drug trafficking. Again, beating that drum of war. This man who has the nuclear launch codes then declared war, that for the first time since World War II sent a torpedo to sink a ship. And the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, which is going to be Fox in a minute, just like CBS is becoming, all them places now, the Iranians did this, then the Americans did this, then the Israelis did. Stop trying to make this is a false equivalency. But yeah, Rodriguez is not at least it's not been reported, she's going to be at the Shield of the Americas. You know what the Shield of the Americas is? If you liked what she did, that is doggone Kristi Noem, Ice Barbie. If you like what she did in Minneapolis, killing people, snatching babies, harassing people as they're trying to go to work and live their lives, if you hated what she did, like it or hate it, guess what? Do you know what the Shield of the Americas is? The Shield of the Americas is DHS gone hemispheric. She didn't lose her job. She got promoted. So stop going for the okie doke. What did the retail y'all? You hear a squirrel running around the attic? Slow it down. One of the reasons why I read magazines. One of the reasons I read books. One of the reasons I read periodicals that take their own take on narrative combinations of what's going on in terms of books, like the New York Review of Books. One of the reasons I read these things is that you can't, even though you can read them quickly, and I'm a pretty quick reader, even as you can read them quickly, it forces you to slow down how you think. To free your mind, you got to contemplate things. And to contemplate things, you have to be able to put the things that are coming at you rapid fire in a much larger context. There are ebbs and flows in this. And as those things ebb and flow, what you will see is that those patterns will emerge, and it will give you what Sheikh Anta Job says is the calm, the serenity to accept the facts as they are. How many times have we been talking about when something happens? Oh, no, hey, no. She going to lose her law license. He going to jail. Everybody needs to calm down and inform your daily action by more and more information, as John Henry Clark would say. You see, Lindsay Halligan, she was in hot water in Florida. Then somebody made a phone call, and the Florida Bar Association says, "Oh, we're not investigating her." Sure, you are. Her law license is in trouble. Pam Biondi is probably next. Maybe she's next. Why? Because now they've subpoenaed her to appear in Congress. But guess what? It's becoming less and less tenable. The lawyers are quitting. Her handpicked people to come do dirty work are on shaky ground or no ground at all. The legal victories continue to pile up. You saw 24 states this week sued the federal government over this attempt not to give back the tariff money and to impose new tariffs. Over 24 attorneys generals, including, of course, the champ. The champ is here. It ain't Muhammad Ali right now. It's Letitia James. The key here is to dissolve this propagandistic illusion of inevitability. They want you to think the thing is inevitable. Stop conceding in advance. Tim Snyder said it in his book on fascism. He's correct in this regard. The fascists cannot swallow an entire country or an entire world without the participation, or at least the non-participation, of the people involved. Jasmine Crockett would be the nominee for Senate if enough people had voted. Yes, there were some problems in Dallas, but that ain't enough. It would have been an easy victory. You got to get out there and get involved. Can we just speak candidly? We were talking with Russell Honore on Friday on Sirius, and, I had a choice to make. Am I going to press this man who ain't going to change? This guy's a retired military guy. He's a retired general. He's got some good points, and then the rest of it is pretty much State Department talking points. And whatever he believes, he ain't going to fall out of line unless it gets beyond the pale. Did he talk about fear of nuclear attack? He sure did. Did he say that Israel was going to fight incessantly? Yes, because at first he said they were attacked. And I said, yeah, they were attacked, but they want to kill every Palestinian. After which he said, yeah. And he also said this war stops tomorrow if the United States cuts Israel off. They're not going to do that tomorrow, but if enough of us get involved, get loud, and get out there and get organized and begin to work in the ballot box and beyond, in the street, in the ballot box and everywhere else, they will cut Israel off eventually. And what they will do, as you've seen the Democrats have to do, Hakeem Jeffries ain't going to do nothing unless he's forced to do it, except talk about doing something. But that's all. But guess what? He has to say, I'm not going to. Okay, we're not going to fund DHS. They already got money. He could say that now because they got some money, but it's getting thicker and thicker in terms of pushing the crisis. Cory Booker, who said, well, Mark Wayne Mullen, if it's not Christy Nome, it's got to be better. And then they drug him for filth on social media. So he came out and said, no, DHS has to be reformed. It doesn't matter who's in charge. Yeah, man, this is not the time for congeniality. I know that's your temperament, but you can't do that right now. And if you think the United States is out here winning stuff and bombing people, why are they asking Ukraine for their drone technique and strategy? Why? Because they launching $1 billion worth of missiles, and Iran don't have those kind of missiles, but they got $50,000 drones. And when they hit that radar place in Qatar, this is a problem. Why? Because the first thing you do, if you somebody bigger than you, you blind them. You take their eyes out. It's not going the way they want you to believe it's going. So, as we wind up for today, remember that next week, well, I should tie all together by just reminding us where we were. The theme, free the mind, free the land. As I said Saturday night, freeing the land is an imperative. We have to get our resources together. When one of us or more of us is in trouble, we've got to be able to help each other. Got news this week of a sister in Nubia, and I hope she doesn't mind that we Sister Sandra, who is long time, beta Nubia, going all the way back to the beta model, test model, right? She had some news that's been very challenging. In about not a little under 2 weeks, she's going to have a radical surgery, had a cancer diagnosis, double mastectomy. She's made it public. It's on the horizon. And when we have a chance to help people, we should help people. It's been a GoFundMe set up. I'm sure somebody will put it in the Nubian and Bongi, maybe even in the YouTube side of the chat. They're trying to reach a goal. I think $20,000 is the goal. But if everybody do a little, nobody do a lot, probably a little on it, because people find themselves in crisis. And in that moment, and this goes for all of us, if there is a moment when we find ourselves in need, we have enough. We showed that on Friday at Sankofa. We have enough. We're showing it here in Nubia as people pinch off what they can and subscribe. And every penny of that goes into building the platform. And as that platform continues to provide new programming and stretch out and do other things, it feeds us back by an order of magnitude more than what we give to it. When we free our minds, we free the land, not just the physical land, maybe not even the physical land, but the place we find ourselves in at any given moment. And I think that is the lesson that we must always keep at the center of our minds as these people wage war with all of us, as these people mistake things with being, as these people somehow think they can control all of us through the threat of physical violence, when in fact, they will realize, soon come to realize, if they haven't already realized it, that they don't control anything at all, if and when enough of us decide that they don't, and that we want a different world. It's just that simple. So we finished now. On part 3 of our book, Born in Blackness. Please note that on Monday night we will be in chapter 18, 19, 20, and 21. Chapter 18 and part 3. Part 3 is the scramble for Africans. Chapter 18, the cockpit of empire. I'm sorry, the cockpit of Europe. Chapter 19, dung for every hole. Chapter 20, capitalism's big jolt. Chapter 21, masters of slaves, masters of the sea. And then that'll finish up Monday night. And then the following week, we will get into part 4, the wages of the Python God. This time next week, as the Muslims would say, inshallah, and those of you who are Muslim, Ramadan Mubarak, as we continue Ramadan. Just know this time next week, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, as old folks used to say in the South, we will be in Montgomery, Alabama for the annual Fred Gray Symposium with Baba Fred Gray. And come on back, Prof. We're done. Be down there. So we'll see where I'm going to set up. Last time I was there for the Fred Gray, we were over across the street from the good brother Brian. Brian Fair, who works with the Fred Gray Institute. But we were over at EJI with Brian Stevenson, his place. We were in front of his place, so maybe I'll do that if the sun's shining in Birmingham next Saturday morning. So,
yes,
all right, Prof. What you pulled up, Jesse? Huh?
Yeah,
wait.
Hold on. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I did.
I was going to ask you. Do you mind saying something before we go about that conversation? Because some people who not yet subscribed to Serious may not have heard you and Paul and Rosemary.
Yeah, no, I only mentioned it to you because you were talking about the Black Panther Party, and I had never met Dr. Mealy, and Paul brought her. And what you said about the people we don't know, which is why you go through the genealogy every time you bring up somebody. And I know folk don't understand it, but it is important to know how we're connected and how this great person is connected to this great person and how this person inspired this person. But I was sitting there, I was so humbled and honored, first of all, that Paul Coates would, want to come to our platform to talk about his trip to Cuba. And then he brought reinforcements, this woman who sat with Malcolm X and Fidel Castro, who knew Assata Shakur, and this is not a household, she's not a household name. So, I want to thank you for the introduction to Paul Coates that, then allowed us to know more people. But this is what you're saying. This is how we get there, is through.
That's how we get there.
Yeah.
And as we both know, and you know this, people who are about the same work, as we find each other, we immediately become family. Paul, thick as thieves, you know what I'm saying? And Paul don't never go nowhere by himself. He always gonna bring somebody like that, because he says, not about me. And Paul, even with Dr. Mealy, and being sometimes when the Panthers get together, Paul is probably the first one who reminds people that the Black Panther Party was majority woman.
Yeah.
Think about the narratives we get framed on that. He said, no, this was my boss. And he starts pointing at the women.
Yeah. And he said, I was taken aback. Like, I'm new. She didn't even know who I was, and she's out here organizing and doing all the things and inspiring him, But what is happening in Cuba, what is happening in Congo, what is happening in all over the globe. There's just not one touch point. And we, I feel like sometimes we don't feel like we have the capacity to understand everything. So the media is going to hone in on the thing that they want us to hone in on. But we can walk and chew gum. We absolutely can. We invented walking and chewing gum. So let's be okay with having the capacity for everything. And I did not realize, because I was on the air when the 5-hour homegoing was. So I had an eye on it, and I was kind of, here's who's up next. Joe Biden, he looks very healthy. I thought he
Joe
was.
looked good. Hey, look,
I
it was
said,
interesting, wasn't it?
wait a minute. I thought y'all told us he was out of here. You
How
know,
about that?
he looked better than Bill Clinton. I said, you know what? I
Yeah,
feel
he
like we've
did.
been bamboozled. I feel like we've been hoodwinked. Uh,
Hoodwink, no
led
question.
led by the wonder person that you were wondering about.
I ain't even, people be thinking, I don't know. I met Barack Obama one time when he was a state senator. I have no beef with Barack Obama. I just wish we would stop believing in make believe. That's not true. I got one beef, only one beef. You're going to stop disrespecting Jeremiah Wright or you're not. I could not care. All the toes in the world down on my mama, my little friend. What you did to Jeremiah Wright, that's your character. That y'all saw who Barack Obama. I don't know why y'all act like y'all don't see Barack Obama
Well,
on that issue alone.
well,
You
you
know
know,
what I'm saying?
he's charismatic and he speaks well. But
Well, people
we're
have
talking
heard
about
good
family.
speakers.
But
No
we're talking
question.
about family right now, and what he did was equivalent to talking about your mama. And so,
Seriously,
if we can process it, I had Otis Moss the third on, whose
who
genealogy, of
spoke?
course,
Yeah.
is at is that's literally the church to Jeremiah Wright. And then Frederick Douglass Haynes the third won Jasmine Crockett's seat that she was gerrymandered out of.
Come on.
So, like, Jeremiah Wright's
Jeremiah Wright.
fingerprints are on our souls. He's not,
And
it's
he couldn't
indelible.
say it. I could see if you weren't gonna say it. I could see that. But then you name every other preacher, including his road dog. He did that on, that was a troll. You named Bishop, priest Father Flieger, who's sitting right there. That's his man's. So in other words, he did that. But you know what? One thing about Barack, he's I don't want to say self-centered. He's so self-assured that if he keep talking, soon enough he made a mistake. Did you see the mistake he made at the end?
I didn't
He
watch it.
clowned Isaiah. When you watch it, he clowned Isaiah Thomas at the beginning because Isaiah Thomas talked a long time. Okay, that's fine. Then
And
at the
also,
end, he said,
name check 5 presidents. So I was like,
"Yeah,
good job. Okay.
come on, you're right, exactly." But then at the end, he said, "What did Obama say?" He said, "I know I went a little long, but Isaiah, he went long," and everybody laughed. And then he said, "Now, if you let a Detroit Piston do that, then I have to. Hey, bruh, you know that Isaiah Thomas is from Chicago and knows every gangster in the city of Chicago. You not from Chicago. Yeah, he played for the Pistons, but he from Chicago." And then the camera, I don't know who did this. They were being messy. They went to Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas looked like he wanted to get up and come on stage. He wasn't smiling. He said, so Barack kept talking. He told her and said, "Oh, you want to clown? Isaiah Thomas from Chicago, friend. You are not. It's good to be home. You from Hawaii, bruh. Let's be clear." So, you shouldn't have clowned Isaiah at the end, but that's Barack. That's the chocolate wonder, y'all. Anyway, let me stop. You gonna play a little bit? This is
Yeah. This is the piece that you said the brother didn't get a chance to speak a lot. And I saw
oh yeah.
him during my break. I was able to hear the interpreter, but I thought, and he actually spoke after Kamala Harris. Let me see if I can turn this up.
Yes.
A little with them.
What a joy and a privilege to have Vice President Kamala Harris. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring a current president. The president of Colombia is here. Where is the president of Colombia? Look, come on, sir. The president of Colombia is here. President.
While you laid this out, Dr. Carr, Colombia is very black. It's like people do
Very
not
black.
realize how African Colombia is. And as there's an assault on all of the blackness, of course, Venezuela. I remember Chavez. I remember Cuba. And there's all of these connections that people have had that we have been distracted away from understanding how deeply woven all of these spaces are and how they've been fighting for the same thing: freedom, liberation, fighting for the same thing
Right.
together. There's going to be
Together.
a lot of talk about the Hispanics that didn't show up for Jasmine Crockett, but it's not all Hispanics. It's not all Spanish speaking people. And we need to be specific about the
That's right.
brain, delusional folk that align themselves with white nationalism that is actually, taking them out, period. All right. I just wanted to say, so thank you. Hold on. Let's go back.
Petro, We honor you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yo no aprendí inglés en mi colegio, así que habrá traducción.
I did not learn English at school, so there will be interpretation.
A toda la familia Jackson, mi sentido pésame, mi solidaridad en momentos que se vuelven difíciles. Vivimos tiempos difíciles.
To the entire Jackson family, my condolences. These are difficult times, and you have my solidarity.
No puedo, como la mayoría de los que aquí han hablado, expresarme en torno a anécdotas, a vida conjunta con Jesse Jackson, al que conocí una vez y al que condecoré con uno de las grandes condecoraciones de la República de Colombia.
Like others who've spoken today, I cannot, or unlike others, I cannot share anecdotes from personal experiences, even though I did once meet Jesse Jackson, and I also gave him an award that is the highest honor that one can receive in Colombia.
Lo hice porque representaba para mí un símbolo viviente de la lucha por la libertad de los pueblos africanos traídos a la fuerza en todas las Américas.
I did so because I saw him as a living symbol of the struggle to uphold the legacy of all of the Africans who had been brought across the seas by force.
Yo vengo del país de la belleza. Nos enorgullece vivir en medio de la belleza.
I come from the country of beauty. We are very proud to live amidst such beauty.
De una enorme diversidad natural como no se encuentra prácticamente en ninguna parte del mundo.
We have great natural diversity, one of the most biodiverse countries in the world.
Una explosión de la vida
We are an explosion of life.
que me ha hecho pensar que la vida es también una energía
And this has led me to think that life is also a form of energy.
y que Einstein se equivocó en que aún le faltó en su ecuación meter la energía vital, la energía de la vida.
Einstein in his equation left out one thing, which is vital energy, the energy of life.
Que también, de acuerdo a la física, se transforma y se transforma.
Which also, according to physics, becomes transformed over and over again.
Y por tanto, como seres vivos con energía vital, simplemente muere una parte y nuestra energía se transforma.
And as living beings with life energy, there's one part that dies, but then our energy is transformed.
Y esa vitalidad natural en mi país, esa diversidad de centenares de miles de especies vegetales, animales, también está en la sangre, en la genética de los seres humanos que habitan las Américas.
And this natural life energy that we find in our country in the hundreds of thousands of species, plant and animal species, is also something that we find in the beings of our world and of the Americas.
Y como no podía llenar mi discurso de anécdotas, de situaciones comunes físicamente personales con Jesse Jackson, decidí mirar un poco la historia de Chicago y la nuestra misma.
And so, since I can't really share personal experiences that I have shared with Jesse Jackson, instead I would like to speak a little bit about the history of Chicago and the history of Colombia and certain aspects that we share.
Y encontré en el Google el encuentro de una palabra de un señor con nombre en francés, Jean-Paul Disable.
And I came across the name of someone with a French name, Jean-Paul Dusable.
Africano, americano él,
an African and American,
que se enamora de una indígena ancestral, decimos nosotros, americana, en este mismo lugar.
and who fell in love with an ancestral American, that is to say, a Native American woman in this very place.
Y se le atribuye el hecho de ser el fundador de esta ciudad desde su casa en donde vivía amor.
And I understand that he is considered to be the founder of this city from his home where he experienced love.
No se sabe bien con certeza si era haitiano.
It's not known for sure whether he was Haitian,
Voy a suponer que él era de Haití por su nombre en francés.
but I will assume that he was from Haiti because of his French name.
Pero entonces estaba libre en este lugar con su piel como afrodescendiente en un lugar que empezaba a pulular en las mentes de las comunidades traídas como esclavos a la fuerza en Haití. La isla de Santo Domingo se le llamaba con la palabra libertad.
And so he lived here with his, freely, as an Afro-descendant, as somebody at the same time that Haiti had become a free country at that time. It lived here with freedom.
Coincidió en que ayer viví un debate con la prensa colombiana. La mayor parte no me quiere, es propiedad de gente muy rica en Colombia.
And yesterday, it just so happens that yesterday there was a debate in the Colombian press. Now, most of the Colombian press don't like me. They're owned by, most of the press outlets are owned by very wealthy people.
Porque aparecí 5 segundos en una película con un actor estadounidense de Nueva York, Cuba, se llama su nombre.
Because I appeared in a cameo role in a film being filmed in Colombia with an actor from New York, whose name is Cuba.
Ganador del Oscar.
An Oscar Award winner.
Y la película se llama José Prudencio Padilla.
And the name of the movie is José Prudencio Padilla.
Espero que la vean.
I hope you see it.
Trata de un hombre afroamericano.
And it is about an African-American man
nacido en el extremo norte de la Guajira.
Who was born in the far north of Colombia in the Guajira Peninsula.
Norte de Colombia actual.
Yeah.
Que es fundador de la Fuerza Naval de Colombia.
And he was the founder of the Colombian Navy.
Le llamamos el Gran Almirante.
And we call him the Great Admiral.
Dr. Carr, he's like, you better translate what I said. And he was rolling them R's.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, he reminds me of Shake Out the Joke. He said he didn't take French, he didn't take English in school, but I remember Shake Out the Joke when he came here. He was Milton was interviewing him, and he's speaking in French. But when he knew enough English to know, she not telling you, no, say that again. You know what I'm saying? And you could tell because a couple of times he mentioned Santo Domingo, and the guy didn't translate because, you know, Cuba, I'm sorry, it hadn't been republic on the same island.
Hispaniola, right? So
yes, exactly.
I'm fascinated, not fascinated, because I looked up, the man has a degree in economics, not history,
yes,
not science. And I'm so frustrated that it seems like everybody else knows history. Like,
oh yeah,
and we don't even know the connection. And we fighting over, you know, borders that we've been forced into. And he's like, yeah, no. Let me tell you a little bit about my connection to Chicago through this man who founded Chicago. And then they brought in the indigenous, and you know, it's like, okay, he was Haitian, but you know, there's a connection. And I'm just like, if we can just get that one piece that we are all just dropped off in different places and connected and tied inextricably. And he even brought the science in. He said, Einstein forgot the one thing, life, us.
Right. Yeah. Us. So, you know, it is frustrating, isn't it? But you know, the beautiful thing about it is here we are doing our little bit by the thousands, week after week. This is how we do it. We free minds one at a time.
Yeah.
Imagine that. You come into Chicago talking about Jean-Baptiste Toussaint. Those people like, oh, we like this guy. He's the president of the country. He's the only president in that room, currently a president. And he came here to pay respects. I only met the man one time, but we gave him the highest honor in our country because we see him as a representative of those who were brought here. And could that, I mean, talk about it. What an honor.
Yeah.
These people can't defeat us. We just gonna keep chipping away at it, bro.
Yes. That's all. Yeah. Somebody in the YouTube chat said he's of Italian descent, and I was like, well, who conquered and dominated Italy for so long? Like, it's like at some point we're gonna have to break away from the way in which we were taught to divide ourselves into these little tiny pieces that can be dominated and conquered so easily. Why wouldn't we want to be as big as we possibly can be? Why do we want to be small?
Right. Now, let's be clear.
Okay. Yes.
Let's be clear. Petro's great grandfather came from Italy. Now, last I checked, men can't have babies. So anybody wanting to say that he's Italian, you probably want to see who his great grandfather married and then who their kid married. Don't do that. It's like saying I got Indian in my family. I know we want to claim everything, so claim the African and indigenous too. Claim it all. It's not a problem. Now, little Marco wants to reject everything except he said he's from Italian and Spanish. This fool sitting up in our faces. So fine, that's fine. So yeah, he does have an Italian great grandfather, which is true. So what does that mean then when he is the president of a country, as you said, that has a plurality of African people, direct Afro-Colombian? The Palenque, shout out to the Palenque, shout out to the people in what's the place? Choco, where the black people, like in Cuba, they go to Matanzas, you can go to Choco in Colombia, that's straight. And then, as Hugo Chavez said, as you mentioned Chavez would stand up and say, y'all know I got the blood of everybody in this country in my veins. That means the Africans, the indigenous, the Spanish, don't play that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, sure. If we want to play that, that's the European thing. How you gonna separate somebody's blood? You can't separate it. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we finish this?
No, I mean, you know what? People can go watch it. Yeah, but you know what? This is a beautiful
watch it on Roland's channel because that's where he gets the algorithm. You know, like, let's not watch. Let's be intentional. Let's go. You know, I intentionally did 5011 versions of this 5 hours.
Yes.
But we have to be intentional because if somebody gonna get the clicks, it should be somebody.
It should be somebody.
The clicks. Let's go.
Yeah, shout out to I should have asked Carol, his producer, to bring me a program so I could make some copies for everybody. But I'm sure she got one, so I'll get her to scan it so we can have programs for the funeral. But that is the beautiful thing. Yes. Everybody not gonna be the same, but when we come together, you can't be defeated. You know what cracked me up, Prof? I was watching Mehdi Hassan and one of these other people that got let go from MSNBC, and they were praising each other on how we're now on YouTube and Substack. And I'm just laughing and say, y'all ain't mentioned none of the black people who already was over there. Well, they mentioned Joy Reid, and that's fine. My thing is, just let everybody do the same. But can you at least talk about the other people? Because why y'all still racing? But we're going to model that too. We modeling it here. That's beautiful.
Because the ice water is not colder, but we haven't gotten our taste buds together. The taste buds have to be as Dr. Sunyata would say, we have to decolonize our tongues as well.
Decolonize our tongues. Sunyata gave me the fly mag. We was having a good time yesterday. Yes, that's right. Shout out to Dr. Sunyata. Tomorrow, I think Narissa's week, right? We got Narissa in the morning.
Yep. So we do wellness.
El Joy's back in the swing.
Yeah, El Joy did Thursday. Sam did Friday. Sam Reynolds. He's doing this incredible Consider Your Movements, where yourself at different stages. He's going through the stages of life, and it is incredible. It is incredible. It's a nice marriage to Dr. Black's Rites of Passage. There's so much Histomatic starts back next week. We have it's a lot. It's a lot going on. We read on Sundays. Well, read on Mondays. We're gonna keep reading because reading is fundamental. It's foundational. So we got to do that. And reading community is transformative. I have beautiful. So Dr. Black's gonna be joining us on Sunday to finish up Sula, and then
Monday. How's it going? I heard y'all talking about it. So
it's people. I've been a reader my entire life, as you have been.
Of course.
But reading with people and just having folk who have not read since grade school out loud, and just getting to the rhythm of different voices. It's not like an audiobook, and then we stop and talk, why she cut her finger off. It's like, have you ever hurt yourself to show people what you would do? It's like, so we're having that conversation. Was he crazy or was, and why they throw that boy so we having a conversation, and Dr. Black's putting the metaphors on it. And, to actually have a scholar in Toni Morrison come and read with us and then also kind of give us some context has been everything. And it's like Sibo Campbell coming in for Sky Full of Elephants. We had a bunch of questions, and then I was texting him afterwards, like, what you mean here? To have the author or somebody who understands the author, and we're all, novels are for you to find yourself. Novels are about you, but to read with people and talk about yourself with other people, and everyone's sharing their stories or their, their grandparents are growing up in the Delta or wherever, and having that experience as well. It's been therapy. So in addition to having
yes.
having our holistic Sunday mornings with Dr. Senyata or Dr. Narissa from NYU, we are also having therapy through the text. So it's been beautiful. So that's it.
That's community.
Right. Yes.
Free the land, free
Yes.
the space. We doing it.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.
All
Carr.
right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Prop Hunter. Yes, ma'am.
All
See
right.
y'all Monday night.